which is the local chapter of National Audubon Society. And even though we're called Bergen County Audubon Society, our jurisdiction given us by national, we have all of Passaic, Hudson, and even some of Morris County in there, and our organization's about almost 85 years old, so we figured it's too late to change our name now. So and we're all volunteer organization too, so, and we're very proud of that. So this is the real story, the real true story of Alice and Al, and this is one of my favorite programs to do. I do love telling this story, not only to talk about eagles, but to talk about what they really mean to the community and really how the community came together to save their nest and protect them. And you know, there's so many stories or history of environmental movement that really gets lost. And really, the reason it gets lost because really it's about local people doing wonderful things. And so I like to keep this story going as a reminder for what people can really do when they set their mind to it. And we'll see. So let's talk about first how we got where we are up until we discovered Alice and Al and how they got their names. Now, this picture is actually, this is one of my, I'm not a great photographer like these folks here, our members, but that is my photo. And that is a local nest in the Meadowlands. And just the male and female just happen to be sitting on a nearby telephone pole and have to be in the right place at the right time. So, but no, we really thought that they were gone forever. And, you know, and not even as a kid. Like I talk to young kids, I say, no, when I was your age, but not even when I was your age, when I was in my 20s, even 30s, we didn't think that eagles would ever come back here. You know, we thought, well, we were probably going to have to go to Alaska to see an eagle, and to see eagles along the Hackensack River or here in Bergen County. That was just maybe migration, they would fly over, but you know, it just wasn't going to happen. And we always hoped, but you know. So at one point, pre or early 1970s, there were about 410 eagles left in the whole United States, the lower 48. And that's certainly not enough to maintain a population. And they were just headed for disaster. And this was the first attempt to try to protect eagles, the Bald Eagle and Golden Eagle Protection Act in 1940, then amended, because people just shot eagles. You know, they saw them as a threat. They were eating their cattle, they were eating their chickens, they were carrying young kids off to their, you know, whatever they were doing. And, you know, people believe, and they were just shot, really. So this was an attempt. I don't know how much it really slowed it down at that point, but at least it was an attempt to try to protect bald eagles. After all, they were the symbol of the country, even then. But now we had this lovely stuff. And this was basically after World War II, where you know, they had DDT, which they used and probably saved probably hundreds of thousands of lives in tropical areas that our troops were. But now they had it here, war was over, let's see what we can do with it. And so they sprayed, it was sprayed everywhere, on people, on everything, and it was just used everywhere it could. And it leads us to, you can still buy these cans on eBay, by the way, if you want to have, they're not full anymore, but you know. But it was just a household everywhere, backyards, and probably if you tested your soil anywhere, you'd probably still find DDT in it. But in 1962, Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring and warned of the dangers of not only DDT, but other pesticides. And of course, much like climate change, you know, she was basically called an hysterical woman. You know, she didn't know what she was talking about. And of course, like the petrochemical industry just came right after her. But she had her facts down. She had it right, what DDT was doing. And it was getting concentrated from the water, especially this is how it affected the eagles, osprey, peregrine falcons, and other birds. It would just get concentrated up the food chain until it was so heavy that it was really being eaten all the time by many, many birds, especially our birds of prey. And what it did was it softened the eggs. So even if eagles did lay eggs, they were too soft, they would just crush and couldn't hatch. And that's what started to devastate the population. So they really almost didn't make it. Many scientists thought, look, probably no matter what we do, we're not going to have eagles here anymore. We're going to try, but probably they're just not going to be able to come back. Try. And what happened was, so these are the factors really that helped. So 1962, Silent Spring. It took 10 years after Silent Spring, by the way, to take DDT out of the environment. 10 years. And so Clean Water Act, DDT was banned in '72, the Endangered Species Act, and Clean Air Act, and all those things were passed. New Jersey was probably maybe a little ahead on the Clean Water Act, but very, very close in timing. I like that. So all these things, this is around the first Earth Day, right? How when people cared and organized for the environment. And anybody remember what president signed somebody's law? Favorite speech?
Nixon, right?
Nixon, that's right, absolutely, that's right, Nixon. So back in those days, it didn't matter what funny letter was after your name, people cared about the environment. And, now I just, we can talk about this later, but I really am really distressed at how I don't see really any candidate, some worse than others, of course, but I don't really see any candidate focusing on the environment. Putting up a solar panel is not enough, just not enough. And you can't, save endangered species with, taking a picture next to a solar panel. But we'll go on. So in 1976, the federal government thought it was the bicentennial. And they thought it might be a good idea to try to bring back the symbol of our country. And that's really how it started. So it actually started up at Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge in New York. So that's how eagles, so what happened was, there was still eagle populations in places like Wisconsin and Michigan. And what they would do is, if an eagle nest had 3 babies, a lot of times that 3rd baby wasn't going to survive. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife would take it out of the nest and fly it, and this is to this area, this remote area in New York. And because the peregrine falcon project was going really well, they thought they could do the same thing with eagles. Not the same bird, very different, but they thought, let's give it a try. We could somehow raise eagles. So they would bring them up in this tower, and basically it was blocked, so they didn't want the eagles to imprint on you. But so this lady would basically, you could thank any eagles you see now, basically you could thank this lady. And this is how I mean that history lost, especially environmental gets lost. She basically they said to her, here you go, want to try raising eagles? So she basically lived out there by herself, had to catch the fish, or fishermen would bring her fish. She climbed that tower every day to feed these eagles, these baby eagles. Really incredible. You really have to get them. Just incredible. When I read that book, I just could not believe it. Just an amazing story. But nobody knew. Here's the amazing thing. So there's no parents there, right? So nobody knew when those eagles would leave the nest, would they survive? Would they know how to hunt? Would they know what they're doing? Nobody knew if that would really work, but it did. And that's Tina. That's a sleeve that she invented, a cut-off gene that she would use to protect the eagles if she had to pick them up off the ground or rescue them. And that's Tina, who came to our Eagle Festival last year. And that's me. And in the middle is actually the head biologist in the Meadowlands, Terry Dons, in the eagle outfit. But I do love that picture. So this is just a graph of where we were with the eagle population to where we've come up now. 1980, there was one nest in New Jersey, one in Cape May, and it wasn't even viable. So, 1980, to some of you young folks, is a long time ago. To me, like just a few days ago. And right behind that was, our own DEP. After that worked, right? After that, they proved that it worked, that other states started following suit. New Jersey was one of them. This is Kathy Clark, who we still work with, who's still head of endangered species in New Jersey DEP. And what happened, most of the eagles that were brought into New Jersey to be hack raised were from Alaska. And the Alaskan eagles and Canada eagles from Canada are bigger eagles. And so the reason that we see a lot of big eagles is because of the bloodline from Canada and Alaska. And so this one is got a photographer back there, but you see 3 eagles in a nest. This is a local nest, and sometimes there's 3 in a family, and there's 3 adults using this nest. It happens. It's a little strange, and this is so local. I wouldn't even tell you how local it is, but that is a local. But so this is where we are, at least of last year. 298 nests monitored, 271 eagles fledged, right from basically 0, and that's where we are now. But it has declined slightly, which worries me. They were removed from the state endangered species list, which nobody I know was happy with it except for the state of New Jersey, who did a nice photo op and said, but I don't know how you take a species off the endangered list when it's in decline. I don't know how you do that, but so it's being watched closely and see how the population goes. It's probably mainly due to avian flu, and there's no research, no more studies being done on avian flu. That's just the way it is. So, so let's get to Allison now. So that's where we are. That's where we've been. That's how we got where we are. So in 2010, we were actually right up the road. We were right across in what was the Overpeck Preserve, right up the road to the county park. I've been to our butterfly garden area that's right behind the butterfly garden now that's being remediated. We were doing a walk, and this bird in April flew right over our heads. And, first of all, we were shocked to see an adult eagle in April because, we thought, well, maybe if there's an adult eagle in April, maybe it's nesting. And the other thing we saw, and you could see with our naked eye, was that transmitter on her back. And so we knew that something might be going on here. Another thing that you might notice is that feather missing on the wing. So those 2 things we knew that it was a specific bird. And this picture was actually taken a little later, but that's Alice. I'll tell you how it got her name. The band, so this photo, it's hard to see there, but if you got close on it, you could see the band. She was banded. We knew that she was banded in New York. Eagles get a federal band and they get a state band when they decide to be banded. So some folks went to work on kind of tracking her down. Where did she come from? What's she doing here? And then jump ahead a year, there's Alice again, flying down, this one's down the river area, I think, in Richfield. And finally, actually, it was an employee at a local warehouse that called attention to it and said, hey, I think there's an eagle's nest on the overpack. And sure enough, there was. Now, the next few photos I'll show you were taken by a guy named Mike Malzone, who I still talk to now, lives out in Poconos. And this is how, we look at the photographers here. This is how photographers could do great stuff. Good photographers, wildlife photographers, are a big part of conservation. and they really helped us protect this nest. Now, a lot of times as eagle nest monitors, and we have a few eagle nest monitors that we'll introduce later as we go, some of the worst pains in the neck are photographers. And they're not birds, they're just people with cameras who decide they're going to get too close to a nest, too close to a bird, and just disturb it just to get a picture. But these are the good guys. These are the good guys that really do stuff. Like there's James back there. It's one of the good guys. And so how did they get their name? Why is it Allison? And I've heard all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, how they got their name. Oh, it's made up, somebody did. But this is it. So the first person to take those pictures I showed you with the transmitters, that was Alice. Alice took those pictures. And her husband just happened to be named Al. And so we thought, well, we're not something you normally do is name wildlife or name eagles, but these eagles do need a name, and so that's how they got their name. That's Alice and Al. That's the human Alice and Al. And so we did find out where Alice actually came from. She was a hack-raised bird in New York City in 2004. Hack-raised means that, so in Inwood, New York, the Parks Department got eagles from Wisconsin, 4 of them, and decided to hack-raise them and see if they would survive in a suburban or urban setting. Well, one of them flew over to New Jersey, like other people do. And that's the only one they ever knew what happened to. And this is one of the 4. We don't know if that was Alice. I like to think it was. But 4 chicks in New York City, so pretty amazing. So we were in contact with the Parks Department there. And it was kind of, we felt like it was a miracle on the overpack. And this just amazing pictures that Mike took of this nest. And love is in the air there. And it was really, at the time, and probably still maybe, the most urban nest in the United States. And if you think about where this is, you have Route 80, you have Route 46, you have the Turnpike, you have PSE&G substation. There's not much nature there, but this was there, and it really made sense because it was really isolated area, and there were a lot of fish. 2 things that eagles really like. And then at home reservations. Now, female raptors and eagles are bigger than the males. They have to do that for egg laying, but they are bigger and usually a little tougher. But there were a few big problems with this miracle. And of course, you know, it's New Jersey, nothing's easy, right? And this especially wasn't. There was a project. So on that land that Alice and Al decided to move to, there was a project called Skymark. And this was like a $750 million project, retail, homes, the whole thing. And they basically wanted that nest out of there. They wanted to relocate it. They wanted to take it. You can get federally a take permit. You can apply for a federal take permit, and you could possibly get them granted. The other issue with this is that there was contamination on that site, I think, from an old paper mill. So you have contaminated ground, you have private owners who want to develop it. We had, Alice and Alan, we all had everything against us at the time. So the developer had a private company do an evaluation of the pollutants, and they were saying that they couldn't clean up the area without taking all the trees down. Lucky for us, U.S. Fish and Wildlife looked at that study and said, and called their study erroneous at best. So that was a line in the sand. You know, we were an old organization, but basically this kind of stuff, these kind of fights were new, and I had just taken over as president, and guess I was naive, and I said, we're going to put our line in the sand and we're going to save that nest no matter what we have to do. And people thought we were a little nuts. people said, well, you don't have money, you're fighting a billion-dollar corporation, you're fighting with a cleanup, you know, and you don't have money, you can't go out and hire lawyers, you know, you might as well try to make some kind of settlement. Maybe they just give you some back, make a nature area or something. And we said, oh no, if you can't save an eagle's nest, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I don't know what the rest of us are doing here. And you know, you would think that you would get every environmental organization on your side, united to stand up. Well, you know, we heard crickets from those groups. Really nothing back, because they thought it was a loser and they weren't going to put any effort into it. Probably some other reasons in there too, but so that's where we stood. And so here's another thing that really the developers didn't like. We documented that area as an eagle roost, which gets as much protection as a nest. And that's a real picture, folks. That's a real picture right down the road here of about a dozen eagles on a January 1st morning. So Skymark accused us of using Photoshop. They did. That's got to be a fake photo. We said, oh no, not a fake photo. That's a real picture. So we had a nest documented and we had a roosting area documented. All the trees that Skymark wanted to take. That's an amazing, and you know what? We get even more there on certain days in the winter. And so, well, so what did we have? We had the community, right? We had the community on our side. So we said, well, let's organize, let's tell school kids, let's tell everybody. We'll get people out here, we'll get the news media on our side, and we'll fight them to the end. And so, it's one of my favorite pictures. So it seemed like we were fighting with everybody. We were fighting with our own DEP had a solution that they were going to put up an eagle nesting tower in the middle of the water. So Skymark could develop. I said, you know, Osprey may use it. So I said to our own DEP, I said, well, give me a documented case where eagles moved from a nest and went to a man-made structure. And they said, we can't do that. I said, then we're not building a tower. And that's out of the question. I said, it's outrageous you would even suggest that. And to this day, I talked to Kathy Clark and she jokes, remember that Eagle Tower? Yeah, remember the Eagle Tower you wanted to put up? Yeah, I remember. You know, I don't forget. I'm Italian, I never forget. And so it was really a grassroots movement from and this was Save the Eagles Day, and each year we still do this. So we make sure there's attention still on that nest area. And so we have a rally down there, and that's what we started doing, have rallies, fighting the news media, politicians, we had everybody coming down there. And it's a real New Jersey story for sure. And we actually got a National Save the Eagles Day. If you look that up online, it will give you the story of Alice and Alice, how the day started. I don't know who did that or the National Day, but we do have National Save the Eagles Day based on what we did for Alice and Alice. So it really is an amazing story. And it's, you know, it's about people too. You can't forget that. All these birds and all nature is about people also. So finally, U.S. Fish and Wildlife stepped in. I'll never forget when I got the call. And actually, I think I called them. And actually, at our butterfly garden, I said, oh, Don, it's going to stay. It's not going anywhere. You know, so they said they can't develop it. So, you know, don't worry about it. We got it. So I don't know if U.S. Fish and Wildlife would do that nowadays, but they did it. And thank God that they did it. So Skymark at that point, they were having money problems, and so they sit back and say, okay, we're gonna develop some of the property, but we're gonna make it a 10-acre Eagle Park. And that's what they agreed to. Not that that's there now, I'll tell you why, but, and you know, I was getting, you know, microphones in my face from all reporters, and they said, is that a good deal, Don? I said, well, if the Eagles stay, it's a great deal. If they don't, it's a miserable one. But it's something. It's certainly something we didn't have before, and that's what we were hoping for. Now, I want to point out that 17 eagles came out of that nest since we saved it. 17 were born out of that nest, right? So if it wasn't there, that's 17 eagles that wouldn't be in New Jersey. And this year we're at nesting time, and so that's one of the babies to get its head out. Hard to see, but so that's this year. That's just last week. So we're doing great, and that's immature eagles, so always a sight. And that's Alice and Al who were yelling at some. Now after when they're on eggs, it's nesting season, they don't tolerate any of those other eagles in the area. They chase them off. They say, okay, it's one thing when we don't have eggs, you can hang out here, but when it's time to hunt and protect the nest and have babies, you guys are out of here. And that was them just yelling at a passerby eagle, like, get out of town. Now, things happen, right? Nature changes, and that was one photo that was the last time Alice was taken at that nest. And eagles fight sometimes to the death. They don't live forever. So many hazards in nature. Cars, there's lead poisoning, there's so many issues. There's old age. We didn't know. And this was the last time we saw Alice in the air. Well, we thought. And then in 2021, there's Alice again, only this time she was nesting in the Meadowlands. So where she went for those few years, nobody really knows. But she came back, and she raised 2 babies on an osprey tower in the Meadowlands. So, I remember getting a call from Chris. You won't believe this, but I think I found Alice.
Is that bird behind Alice another eagle? The baby.
That's the babies. That's the babies. So when the babies leave the nest, they're as big as the adults. They don't grow up, they don't. And that's the same with almost all birds. When people say, oh, I got a baby, except for ducklings, they're just as big as the parents. And sometimes the baby eagles are heavier and bigger because they've eaten so much on the nest. So Alice was a great mom, and she raised 2 more babies. And that's, if I roll up my sleeve, you'll see my Alice tattoo with the transmitter on it and all. Now that transmitter never worked when we found her. I think they said it only lasted for a few months after they released her, and that was something. But they never got the tracking for it. So that Alice disappeared again. She could still be out there. We don't know what happened to her. But that same nest, though, there was a new female on that nest that Alice originally nested in. And a new Alice, so we call her Big Alice, because she's a really, really big eagle, probably with Alaska strain. And so that's Big Alice. So you can see how much bigger the female is than the male. And Alice is, we're not body shaming in any way, but she's a big girl, big, powerful eagle. And so our friends at Sky, yeah.
Is that Al?
That's Al, yeah, that's Al. And we don't know about, it still could be the same male out there. As far as we know, we have no reason to believe otherwise, that it's not still the same original mate of Alice 1. So our friends at Skymark couldn't happen to better people, went bankrupt. And now New Jersey Transit owns that property. They are better stewards of the property than, of course, Skymark was. So right now that area is kind of blocked off. And they plan a bus terminal on that property. They have no plans to go near the nest or harm it. Probably be the worst political thing they ever did if they tried. But we're certainly there watching them, and we do have a kind of good working relationship with them, I call them. But so that's the way they are. But what happens is when somebody buys the land, all those old permits, like for the 10-acre Eagle Park, they go out the window. Another reason I'm happy to put back up that I got threatened by Skymark when on my old job. One lovely gentleman from Skymark came in and in the store that I worked and basically threatened me because I was costing his family millions of dollars. I said, well, then I guess maybe you should not try to develop it any longer. What can I tell you, Um, yeah, and I was warned by a few people in the state that I should be careful, but I'm an old teamster, I thought it was funny. And so then we put out buoys to protect them. That's folks from the county that help us maintain the area. That's a new sign from the viewing area. This is one of the few eagle nests. That's the only eagle nest that you'll ever hear a location out of because it's a safe viewing area. It's illegal to approach it too close, disturbance. But this area, you can go out. Probably not the best time now with so many leaves on the trees. Winter would be a better time. But you can go out and see it and view it from a safe. You say the eagles stay and come out with this. And so these are just some of the signs that we put out in that viewing area in Richfield. And I have to point out that Dean raised your hand. So a lot of these great photos of the babies and stuff now, Dean is a photographer there and also. And that fish is there. That's a big gizzard shad. And that's them arguing over lunch. That's an unfortunate cormorant. They do take birds. They eat mainly fish, but they're opportunists. And so especially when the water's frozen and it's hard to catch fish, waterfowl and ducks will do just fine. And that's what they're doing. I'm sure they had a little problem. But they're slow flyers, the cormorants, and a little easier to catch. Oh, back. Going backwards. I'm going the wrong way. Yeah, let me trying to go backwards. There we go. So that was the photo, right? That eagle was sitting in the water. It looked like it was taking a bath, and it came up with that big eel.
Oh, eel?
Yeah, you see how big, that's a big eel. So that, how big that eel, so that eel has to be like that thick. My grandmother would have loved that eel. But that's a huge thing. So this is a really powerful bird, and this is, so they fly by, they don't usually pick these sticks up off the ground. They fly by and snap them off a tree. So sometimes you're standing and you hear this snap and you see an eagle fly by without hesitating or snap a small tree off another tree from that. It's really, their strength is really incredible. And you can see, you're talking about a 6-foot wingspan and you can see how big those branches are. And that is more nesting. So then after all the sticks, and these nests get about, as big as a car, then they'll bring the soft stuff in. The grasses where they'll lay their eggs on in the middle of the nest. And that's a good picture. I come up with a few once in a while. All the packets. And so now the eagles came back, we really need to do our job. It's not over. Because they came back, there's no guarantee that they're going to stay. And if we're going to allow uncontrolled development, we're going to allow pollution, we're going to allow nothing to be done about avian flu, but look at it, then we could easily go back and lose them again. I'm not personal alarmist. To do the job that I do every day, I have to be positive. I also have to be a realist. I'd say we really have to watch them. Really not only eagles, but eagles are actually a symbol of how good these laws like the Endangered Species Act work. And today's threats, of course, avian flu, still they get shot illegally, habitat destruction, lead poisoning, a deer gets shot by hunters, it's full of lead, the eagle opportunists, they pick the lead shot out of the deer and get lead poisoning, very hard to treat. And of course, climate change, that's changing the whole dynamics of an ecosystem, whether it's fish, plants, whatever it is. So each nest in the state of New Jersey has an eagle monitor. mostly at least the ones that are accessible. And Dee, back, raise your hand again, Dee. So Dee has been our eagle monitor. And that, people say to me, gee, I'd like to be an eagle nest monitor. Be careful what you wish for. Tell them, be careful what you wish for, because you're everything from a security guard to a mom, a babysitter. You're everything. In not so nice weather most of the time, and it's a long season that begins usually in November, December, and doesn't end until maybe July. And then it starts all over again. So a really dedicated bunch in New Jersey that monitors. Not every state has a monitoring program, but New Jersey does. And there's Linda. Linda's there too. And there's just so Linda and Dee spend most of that time, and I'm so glad they do, because I can't spend as much time there as I like, and they do such a wonderful job. I get daily reports of what's going on. That day it's probably like 20 degrees, and this is the windiest place on Earth.
Like fog.
It's like fog. This is the windiest place on God's Earth. I remember when we first went out there, it was the fall, and we just came from a bird walk, and we were warm, and we stood out there and we looked at each other and said, oh my God, it just dropped to like 30 degrees, we're dying. And it's just, the wind is in your face constantly. It is cold.
Where is that?
And that's actually in the town at the end of Bell Drive in Richfield. And it's a special recognition. So the early photos that you saw were my friend Mike Malzone and the late Jill Homsey, who so importantly documented that picture of all the eagles roost on that, a New Year's Day morning at sunup. She was out there photographing. So that's the good stuff that our good photographers can do. So Allison L, thank you. And who knows, she could be out there somewhere. I still hope that one day again we'll see her. And I did get to hold an eagle in my arms while the state banded it. Not all eagles are banded, they still do it. And this was the nest, this wasn't one of Alice's babies, but was the same nest after Alice left, that last nest in the Meadowlands. And those are PSE&G guys that came in with the state, and they went up in their trucks, took the babies down, they were weighed, blood tested, and before they would put them back in the nest, I got to hold it. And my friends tell me the only two times they saw me smile was when I held an eagle and a peregrine falcon. And so please join us. Come out on all our nature walks. Our programs are always free. We really appreciate it. It's a shameless plug for my book. It's out the wall. It's a good deal. Only $10, but it's really about growing up and my adventures in the Meadowlands. And I do have a radio show now, believe it or not. People want to listen to me. It's on WFDU the fourth Sunday of each month, and then it gets archived for 2 weeks, so you don't have to get up in the morning and listen to it. But it's really great stuff.
What time?
6:30 in the morning. But then that's why it's archived for 2 weeks. So you could just, and I usually send out the link or post the link once the show airs. And let's talk about affordability, right? That's the popular thing. Every politician wants to talk about affordability. We haven't raised our dues in 20 years. So that's affordable. And you get all kinds of great stuff, and it's only $20 a year to join. So please become a member if you can. And conservation is about community and kindness, ultimately. And so, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.